Today, we begin our journey with understanding the cycles of time and space. Livia Kohn will help us to understand the Daoist clocks, calendars, and flowing cosmic currents, while Cynthia Ajar shows us how to create sacred space, taking advantage of the flow of energy in our own home. Louis Kamyati will give us direction, understanding the past frameworks of Daoist and Chinese medicine and how they connect to present illness and wellness. Stargazer Li will then take our gaze up into the night sky, helping us to engage with the actualness, the root of these theoretical frameworks of the Bagua. The basis of traditional Chinese medicine theory and I Ching divinatory theory as well, giving us tools and techniques to see these patterns with our own eyes. And our last speaker of today, Lorraine Wilcox, will bring these ideas home historically by giving us details of the interplay between medicine and divination through translations of the actual writings of the scholar physicians of Imperial China. And so our first speaker really doesn't need an introduction, I believe, for most of the people here in the Daoist community. The author and editor of 60 plus books on Taoism, you have no doubt run across her work on topics ranging from meditation to Chinese culture to longevity practices. She now runs Three Pines Press, a publishing house that serves as the voice for Taoism in the Western world. She gives lectures, runs workshops, and is one of those special people in our community that has studied Taoist practices alongside Taoist culture and history as well. Her talk today will take us on a journey through time in 6 dimensions to be exact. She'll show us how Taoism uses various cycles of time and its healing arts through exercise, through meditation, and through divination, flowing with cosmic currents and ending in a state of unified perfection. By the way, Dr. Livia Kohn has a book on the subject as well, if you'd like to learn more, called Taming Time. Without further ado, let's kick off this conference with a real superstar in the Daoist world, Dr. Livia Kohn. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and thank you for organizing this. I will take a quick moment to share my PowerPoint presentation. So we have it all here. And then I will go to the slideshow. And we are ready to roll. Yes, so my topic today is the dimensions of time in Daoist healing, and divination will play part of this as we go along, but it places it into a slightly larger context. And as you mentioned, I do have this book called Taming Time, Daoist Ways of Working with Multiple Temporalities, which is the book that looks at the 6 different levels of time in the Daoist context. And the 6 different levels of time were first proposed by J.T. Fraser, and this is one of his books called Time, the Familiar Stranger. Now, J.T. Fraser, Julius Fraser, was originally born in Hungary. He came to the US after World War II and was like an entrepreneur in California, I believe, and developed various companies and had all kinds of inventive skills, and then eventually got interested in more metaphysical topics and took a PhD in Germany. And then in 1966, he founded the International Society for the Study of Time, which is still around. And they have a website and they do conferences. They do a conference every 3 years. And the previous one was 2 years ago in Japan. And the next one is next year in Sardinia in Italy. And I attended the one in 2019 when I was really interested in this Daoist time topic. To see the conference is fascinating because people come from all different fields and areas of expertise being united in their study of time. And over the years, a number of different Daoist scholars, notably Joseph Needham, Nathan Sivan, and Christopher Skipper, have participated in those conferences. And some of the conferences have also resulted in edited volumes. So we do have some of the key publications on Daoist visions and Daoist practices of time in volumes that were essentially created by Julius Fraser and his organization. The big distinction he makes, and that is very relevant for our purposes, is between kairos and chronos, which are Greek terms, and essentially they distinguish the concrete and specific form of time versus a more abstract and cosmic dimension. So kairos is originally means a goal. It's like comes out of the skills of archery where you're pulling an arrow and then letting it fly to reach its goal, and weaving where your shuttle passes to create certain patterns. It's like translates into daily situations, concrete situations where you have to choose a particular action or a particular location to go to or a particular relationship at a specific moment. In Chinese, this translates into Shi and Feng, which is the seasons, the time to do things correctly in accordance with seasonal patterns, and the directions, cosmic and concrete directions. Chronos, on the other hand, is father time, as a deity described as a titan who devours his children. It's unyielding form of time, it's overpowering, it can be destructive, and it's like a central feature of the greater universe. In the Chinese, traditional ancient Chinese, this is called Yuzhou, which I translate space-time, which, if you can see from the character, are words that have the character for roof, as their radical, and they are the eaves and the beam of the roof. So it's like the overarching structure of time. And Zhuangzi says in chapter 23 that space has reality, but there's no place where it resides. Time has duration, but no beginning or end. And that is this kind of Yuzhou. So Yu is space, has no place. And Zhou, which is the time part of this, has duration but no beginning. And A.C. Graham defines this kind of time as the cosmos as it extends and the cosmos as it endures. So there's always a correlation to space, and Fraser has quite a bit of literature on how time relates to space and how this is expressed in language and how it is expressed in how it is activated in people's consciousness. So for example, if you are a Western person, growing up speaking a European language, your vision of time tends to be from left to right, and you're moving forward. It's like from back to forward. In the Chinese system, it is more from you, it's like behind you, and then the present moment is here. So it's a different spatial, people imagine time in different ways through space. And that's a very interesting connection. And the Chinese obviously have somewhat understood that connection because there's always space and time, season and directions. Now, there's 6 levels of time, and we're going to go from the most concrete to the most elusive, from the most organized to the most cosmic, as you will. The ultimate number 6 is timelessness, the state before the beginning of creation. And we're working with the first, which is time as it's defined socially. It's a social convention, it's a created system, there's a certain artificiality to it. Time in a social setting develops in response to the need for order. There's standardized sequences, like, there's this book here called The Story of Clocks and Calendars. There's the understanding of how history works. There are social things like what age you should be when you get married, what age you should be when you retire. Those are all social definitions of time. And there's also philosophical and mythological readings in this level. And time here is very linear. It's an arrow, we call the arrow of time. Entropy is a big deal, the kind of decay that happens with time, and you're sort of flowing very much in a single direction. In the Chinese system and in healing, this translates into the double hours of the day, that are associated then with specific organs, and that translates into applying medications or massages or healing in the hours that are associated with certain organs. Also, it translates into practices, meditation, Daoist cultivation practices that are timed because certain organs are at their particular dominance at a particular hour. And then in the Daoist system specifically, they also superimpose the 8 trigrams on the clock, so that you have the hours around like 3 in the afternoon is like the I think it's the fire hour, and then in the morning it's the water hour. So whichever it is, some texts in the history use the trigrams to say at Tian or at wind or at the hour of earth, you should do X, Y, and Z. And so we do have structures that come out of the traditional culture that get superimposed on the rhythm of time in the course of the day, but that also applies to the months and the years and longer periods. We are familiar all with the heavenly stems, 10 symbols that were designated to mark the days of the week during the Shang dynasty. Sam was mentioning the oracle bones, so that's how far this goes back. It's a structure. Different cultures make decisions on how long their weeks are. The 7-day week is a Babylonian invention and has, been transmitted into the West. Both the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Chinese had 10-day weeks, and there is in medieval China a period that is a 5-day week. So we have all kinds of, but those are all superimposed structure on the flow of time. And so the heavenly stems are one example of that. The 12 branches connected to the zodiac animals are the stations of the planet Jupiter as it passes through, connecting around the sun, moving around the sun. And they are also used to designate time, but longer periods. And then the two together, as you are probably also familiar with already, is the sexagenary cycle, where you have 60 combinations of the stems and branches to designate anything from the hour to the day to the months and the year. So and those become very important, and especially in fate calculation, which is a major factor in healing, and where you also, this is starting to get a little bit in the divination direction. You're calculating a person's tendency to have certain features in their lives, be it wealth or relationships or health or disease, on the basis of these so-called 8 characters. So there are 2 of these 60 type cycle characters, each for year, month, day, and hour. And this is calculated in relation to the places, the years, and the birth date of other people. And you also use their 8 characters for all of this. And again, a space dimension comes into it, because spaces are also defined in these with the help of these cyclical characters. In some cases, there are certain taboos that are related to the names of the stems and branches. So for example, the very first character is Jia, which means shell or like armor. And a very old taboo is that one should not eat shellfish type critters on days that have that particular character in them, which is then every 10 days, essentially, you don't do that. And then a lot of practices are timed in accordance with the cycle in relation to the individual fate and the individual's position within the time structure. An example of internal cultivation that works with the system and which also, again, has a space dimension is the heart is like heaven, kidneys are like earth. It's a yin-yang relationship, and they're 8.4 inches apart, matching the distance between heaven and earth, which, according to the traditional system, is 84,000 Chinese miles. And so qi in the body is like yang and fluid is like yin. And the zi hour, which is the midnight time, qi grows in the kidneys. During Mao, it reaches the liver, which is yang, which is like early morning time. Qi dominates here, yang ascends and enters the domain of yang, which is like the spring equinox. So the hour in the day matches the period, the sun cycle in the course of the year, and that is relevant for your practice. During the Wu hour, which is noontime, qi reaches the heart, generates fluid. During Yo, which is late in the early evening, yes, it reaches the lungs, which are yin. As fluid abounds here, yin descends and enters the domain of yin, which is like the fall equinox. And this is from an inner alchemical text of the 11th century. So you have time in healing, sociologically defined structures that allow you to chart the movements of qi and the power or activation of certain organs in this pattern, and then you can relate to that pattern in order to optimize the functioning of your health. So that's how socio-temporality plays into healing. The second form of time is called nootemporality, which means like noetic means knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and its conceptions of time. And so this includes the narrative of one's own identity. So I was born here, and my name is this, and my culture is that, and then I developed like this. So again, it's a very linear kind of time. You have past and future as your main anchors of this, but the present comes into it also. And you're working with memories and dreams, or memories and visions, or ideals, and regrets and desires. And this is where a lot of emotions come in. So time becomes an emotional factor, and the emotions have an impact on health. And you're healing by taking a gap or making space between the past and the future and being in the present moment. So here we have practices of different forms of meditations, visualization, sitting in oblivion, concentration meditation, also activities that are very engaging, that put you into immediacy, that puts you into the present moment. So the organs, as you're familiar, are the 5 main storage organs, or zang, and they have the classic emotions, which you all know about. But if you look at it in terms of time, then they translate as having a relationship to time, because it's very difficult. I mean, you could be angry in the present moment and just have this rush of, fury, but then it's gone. It's like, I mean, the brain scientists, neurologists tell us that, an anger is a natural biological reaction, especially if, like in an animal, if somebody grabs some piece of food that you really wanted and you get aggressive, but it passes through the brain in like 5 seconds flat, and then the animal moves on and does something else. If you hold on to anger, which is where it becomes destructive, it's because it's something in the past that you keep remembering and hating, or there's something where you're like impatient and aggressive and pushy about the future. Well, let's go already, why aren't we moving? kind of thing. And so you have relation, all these emotions have a time dimension to them. So the heart, which is excessive joy, you're seeing the past as, oh, it was so much better how many years ago, and oh, it was so beautiful, and everything's so miserable now. And so, and then you get greedy for the future, worry, you're double guessing your past, and you're over planning the future, and sadness, you have regret or no hope. And there may be trauma and fear and anxiety. So anything that is the should, I ought, I must, I have to, if only I didn't do this, if only I hadn't seen that, those are all things that are detrimental to health. So we have a time dimension of the no temporality sort in our pathologies. A key way to remedy this is the meditation of the inner smile, where you're smiling into the organs and you're 100% in the present moment. As you do that, you express gratitude and joy. You'll see the emotions leave and the virtues arrive. So your sadness that's stored in the lungs gets changed to righteousness or uprightness. The excessive joy of the heart gets changed to love or enthusiasm. Anger gets transformed into kindness, fear to wisdom, worry to honesty. And then you circulate your chi into the lower elixir field. The 5 sprouts, which is one of the oldest visualization techniques that have been documented in Daoist literature, it comes in a number of different forms. Going back to the 2nd century, they, I don't know how to do that. They, is the historical forerunner of the inner smile, where you visualize, you pay, and again, there's a space dimension here. You're physically placing yourself facing a certain direction, usually starting with the east, and then you see on the horizon this fresh chi, in this case a green color. You guide it towards the body, shrink it. There's an incantation that comes with it. You feel yourself swallowing it, guide it to the matching organ, which would be the liver, and you strengthen it, make the organs into a cosmic entity. So you're 100% in the present, and you're physically connecting in space to the energy of a given direction, and you're creating a neutral, positive, non-emotional, calm state of positivity in the organs, which has a strong healing effect. Okay. Good. Moving from here to the 3rd level, which is biotemporality, we're talking about the body. Biotemporality is essentially the body clock, and it's very complicated. And because each organ, or many of the organs and parts of the body, have their own clock, and they run according to their own little cycle. And it gets all very confusing. And people have this big discussion on, like, how exactly does it work? You know, is there a body clock? And what is the organ that is like the dominant one and that is in charge of everything else? And so the assumption is, after many studies, that there is something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a set of neurons in the hypothalamus that is the actual time manager of all these different time cycles in the human body. And the time cycles in the human body are very important, because major upsets in time cycles can really be causes of diseases. And this one starts to be a little more circular. We do have the circadian rhythm in the course of the day, and we have annual rhythms with the sun and the moon, but it's also linear in the sense that your biology changes as you get older. So there's a life cycle that comes into it in biotemporality. So one example of how to manage biotemporality is through food intake. The classic Chinese pattern or recommendation is to have an energizing breakfast that is warm, that enhances your yang power. Lunch is warming, again, for replenishing qi, should be a cooked meal, meat and vegetables. And dinner should be calming and more enhancing of yin, lighter food, maybe a stew or nothing too heavy and oily. So you have a rhythm, a temporal module that is biologically based, that says your body needs certain kind of nourishment at certain times. And then also this changes with winter and summer. And there's some Sun Tzu Miao, who you mentioned earlier, has a whole text on the different, for the 12 months, the different dietary recommendations, what best to eat at what time, and how to keep healthy by matching and working with the seasons. Then we have the healing exercises, Dao Yin, which we will hear more about when Dolly Young will talk tomorrow. You do ideally practice during the Sheng Qi or living Qi period before noon. You work with the muscles and open the joints. You guide energy through the channels and connect to heaven and earth. And the practice is done during the time of rising yang. So you're absorbing yang qi on a daily basis as you do the exercises. And there are quite a few Taoist texts that talk about early morning exercises and describe what you should be doing. Some of it come with self massages, where you bring your hands together and then rub them over your face and over your body. Then we also have monthly practice. So in the 4th and 5th months, for example, on certain days, you should sit upright facing south. So these are summer exercises. The 4th and 5th months of the lunar calendar is somewhere between the middle of May and the end of June, which is summer. You click your teeth, you swallow the saliva, you sit in meditation and breathe red qi into your heart. You let it enter through the mouth, swallow it in 3 gulps, and you exhale with ha to balance deficiencies. So there's a whole set of practices that are connected to the heart, that are warming, that are energizing, and that are done at the time in the months when the heart is dominant, the energy of the fire is dominant, and the heart is needs the most support. On a more linear note, time on the biological level has a cycle, and we do have the Huangdi Neijing, the medical classic, describes how every 7 years the qi changes. So when a female, and they have the same cycle for males, but it's every 8 years, so different numbers. So gradually the essence rises and the teeth come in, and there's some puberty at age 14. People are fully grown in their early 20s. Late 20s is the peak time, when the hair is thick and the muscles and bones are strong. And then over the next 20 odd years, there's continued decline until there's menopause for women, or men just get weaker. So we do have a pattern over a number of years. And for each of these periods, there is exercises, there's treatments, there's dietary recommendations, there are herbal supplements that can be used in order to support people as they move through this cycle. So time, again, is important. Biological time. When you're treating a person, you want to know how old they are, and what their traumatic experiences may have been, and what their goals are, and how active they are. So you want to see where they fit in these cyclical patterns, so you can make the best recommendations. In part of this is the age-based diet. Small children who are heavy on the young side tend to crave sweets but don't like spicy flavors. Young people who have a strong yang need more cooling foods. Older people who have an increased level of yin should be more warming foods. So, you have stuff like this, but you also look at individual cases. Now, from here, we're moving to the 3 higher levels of temporalities, which are less concrete and less tangible and less commonly known. So, I mean, if you talk to people about time, everybody will say, oh, yeah, calendars, clocks, yes, and memories and plans for the future and circadian rhythm. And yeah, so that's all fairly common knowledge. But once we move off of there, then we're getting into the stars and planets. And Fraser calls this eotemporality, where you're connecting to the sun and the moon, the Dipper and the pole star. And this is, death comes into it only from the biotemporal level onwards. The stars arise and flourish, they decline after many, many, many millions of years. Their life expectancy is much longer than on the bio level. But there's no real death. It's a transformation, a transition to supernovas. So a big distinction is made between the big break between biotemporality and the more cosmic forms of time is that in biotemporality, you have this entropy and death. And there's also, even within biotemporality, you have cellular organisms like amoebas that just divide and multiply, and they don't die per se. Then there's this whole connection of sexuality and death, which plays out in Taoism in the nurturing of the Jing, of the sexual essence. So the big deal here is we have 24 seasonal divisions. There are a number of exercises in the Taoist tradition that are closely related to this kind of time. So we do have 24 solar-based divisions that are all named after solar events, such as the beginning of spring or the equinox or the solstice or certain kinds of heat or rain. And you can see them here in this elliptical kind of depiction where you have summer and then fall, winter. And each of these has a particular kind of practice. And these are the 24 healing exercises associated with the 24 seasonal divisions are attributed to the Song master Chun Tuan. And so, for example, seed sprouting, you should stand up, lift both arms to the ceiling, make a slight back bend, and repeat this 35 times. So you do that during the 2-week period or 15-day period of seed sprouting. And then over the summer solstice, that 2-week period, you sit with your legs out straight, you lift one leg, hold it with both hands and stretch, which is, I think, the picture we have here. And during minor heat, you kneel and stretch the other leg away. So you alternate right and left on this one. And so you have these exercises that keep your body supple and flexible and are working with the seasonal patterns. Then we do have the 28 lunar mansions, which match the Indian nakshatras and the Arabic manzils. And the Chinese system acknowledges 4 heraldic animals called the dark warrior in the north, the red bird in the south, the white tiger in the west, and the green dragon in the east. And those are gigantic constellations in the sky. And the lunar mansions, which is how the moon shifts in the course of the year through the night sky, those lunar mansions are portions of those larger constellations. And so, for example, in the East, we have the horn of the dragon, the neck of the dragon, the heart of the dragon, and the tail of the dragon. So the lunar mansions are named describing certain parts of this big constellation, and the same goes for the South. The thing is that the use of the lunar mansions is more divinatory in nature. It is an indication of whether certain activities are auspicious or inauspicious for the certain person. So certain times when the moon is in a specific position are very bad for this or that or the other activity. And so your lifestyle and your healing and health practices need to be coordinated with that. So we have a matching with the moon here. Then, of course, Taoists are really big on absorbing the soul, the energies of the sun and the moon. They also have ecstatic excursions where they travel to other stars and meet deities and work with the Northern Dipper. So there's like a whole large number of various practices that are spiritual and healing connected to the stars. So here's just one example from the Lingbao Wufu Shu. On certain days in the months, you face the sunrise in the morning, you open up your hair, your eyes are closed. You concentrate on the sun and visualize a small child who's dressed in red and who resides in your heart. And he emits a bright red radiance. Then you rub your hands from your face to the heart 12 times. You visualize the radiance of the sun, and you also allow a yellow energy to appear, and you make this one enter your mouth and swallow it in a rhythm of 9 times twice. And you rub your heart and recite the prayer, ruler of the sun, let your primal young energy merge its power with me. So you're connecting for a greater level of cosmic health. You're connecting with the sun, and you're activating this kind of eotemporality by matching your practice with the planets. Number 5 is proto-temporality, which goes beyond the planets into the quantum level. And here we're really talking synchronicity, and the classic book on this is by Carl Jung. This actually is, Carl Jung hasn't actually written a book on synchronicity. He has a number of papers, and they're collected in this volume. It's nonlinear, it's acausal, it's all simultaneous. In terms of space, it's non-local, and everything is in a holographic net, so everything is continuously and always interconnected with everything else. It's not linear anymore, so you're not thinking, oh, it rains and then the grass gets wet. It's like, everything is just merging and moving together in a very powerful, synchronized, integrated, networky kind of way. You have emergence rather than creations. Things just sort of bubble forth. You have events rather than actions. You have waves that are in harmony and flow together or flow apart and then come back together. And in a great sense of entanglement, like an intricate kind of network on this temporal level. The Chinese talk about this in terms of the concept of shi, which has been translated propensity. And propensity is like a particular combination of circumstances that all come together in one particular moment and create a particular pattern of situation. It's a moment in time that's very synchronistic, synchronous, and that gives the opportunity to do certain things. things. It's like, but then there's the next moment in time that also gives an opportunity. So it's both static and dynamic. It's both a position and a potential. It's a state and a process. So it's very quantum-y. So, you know, quantums is waves and particles. So it's both something and some flowing thing. They're tendencies that are generated spontaneously. It's a particular bubble in the universal unfolding. Francois Julien, who's written a book on this, which is very good and which has, I think, something or other of propensity, but it has propensity in the title and it's translated into English, calls it the fluid configuration of a system according to which things function. So the implications are tendencies. So it's not cause and effect, but we're talking about situations that have potential, that have efficacy. It's a force that is created by the dynamics of circumstances. And so this dynamic is a dynamic tendency that comes from a particular situation in the world that is essentially a network of multiple fields in constant flux. Time here is a window of opportunity that opens and closes, a brief moment where you can take action, and it's closely connected to chance and fortune. Originally, the whole idea of propensity was explained and formulated in a military context, and Francois Julien goes into that in quite a bit of detail. But it also was using a water metaphor, how, you know, different streams come together and create some kind of an eddy and then move on. And then from there, it got moved into calligraphy, feng shui, life situations, and other realms. And here's where divination really comes into it. And where when you're divining, you're connecting to proto-temporality. And proto-temporality as also atemporality, which is our last item, and also the stars keep underlying. So the way the system works is that if you want to figure it as a pyramid, then sociotemporality is like the tip of the pyramid, and then every level gets wider. So we're now at level 5. So prototemporality is really underlying all these other forms of time. And so it is always possible, and we are always connected to prototemporality, but we're often obviously not conscious of it. And so the way to make this conscious, other than being on the lookout for, you know, synchronicity events like the ones that Jung described, is with the help of divination. So you could throw a coin, you can use the yin-yang blocks that they have in temples, you could use those sticks that you shake and then a number comes up. But the number one and most important form of divination is the I Ching. And the I Ching starts with the singularity, the Wuji, the limitless original power of Tao, and then divides into yin and yang, divides into the 4 emblems, and then gets placed into the 8 trigrams, which again are divinatory factors. And there are quite a number of ways in ancient China of using these things that are not necessarily, the I Ching is just one form of many. There's quite a few ways of, there's one system that only uses trigrams. There are various other systems that don't go to the full hexagram system of the I Ching. But the idea is you're creating an oracle with the help of tools. And so usually the tools are the milfoil stalks, like we see in the top here, where you're dividing 50 stalks in certain ways to get your lines, or you use the 3 coins and throw the coins, and you do that 6 times and you get a hexagram. Each hexagram consists of 2 trigrams. One is above, the other is below. And so here's a chart that comes out of Wilhelm's translation of the I Ching. And the hexagram gives you the configuration on the right here, the hexagram signals the configuration formed by chance events in the moment of observation. The hexagram is a way to make these complex, time-based situational patterns visible. So they're there and you're in them, but in order to understand them consciously and make intelligent decisions about them, the hexagram is what helps you do that. So it indicates your position and the basic tendency in of the situation in space-time. And as you notice, we're moving away from kairos and into chronos. We're no longer, this has an effect on your concrete timing of when am I going to do X or Y, but you're really working with space-time on this level. The reading of a hexagram in the I Ching offers the most probable unfolding of events over time. And as you probably know, the hexagrams, you have either yang lines or yin lines, single or dual. And each of the, if your yang line or yin line is strong, then it would change into the opposite. And you're building your hexagram from the bottom up, and then you're changing the hexagram from the bottom up. And so you can have as many, if all 6 of your lines are strong, you can have as many as 6 different readings. That gives you like a temporal sequence. If there's just one and they're all weak lines, then this is the situation and this is what you're doing, and the I Ching does not provide any future direction. But it does show which attitudes and actions can maximize advantage given the propensity of a situation. And so the hexagram is a system that's analog for general conception of time. So this is very much time-based, controlling time, using divination, and especially also in healing situations. You want to see how much medication, what kind of practices, what kind of activities, or rest periods are most beneficial for a given person in their particular circumstances, and the I Ching is extremely helpful for that. The concept or image which emerges from the whole and which is therefore identified with the name of the hexagram is called the time of the hexagram. So the 64 hexagram are 64 divisions of time, and they help connect to the level of proto-temporality, which underlies a lot of the other levels. And so it's extremely helpful. And this can also be done in meditation. Divination is a tool to access this, but you can also in meditative states connect to the proto-temporal level because it's always there and active. Moving on to the last of our 6 stages is timelessness, or atemporality, as Fraser calls it. I do have an edited volume on this. In comparative perspective, coming to terms with timelessness, where quite a few scholars have worked on what the heck is this and how do we deal with this. And it's the original state of cosmic unfolding. It's both eternal and infinite. So eternity means it's 100% in the present moment. It's here. It's a vertical dimension of time. Infinity means it lasts forever. It's a horizontal dimension of time. But those are helpers. Those are really, tools that we use to get a grip on this. And again, we're using spatial metaphors to get time to get a sense of what this is. In a state of timelessness, there's no more choice. You're just there. You're not making decisions like you would do in proto-temporality, although in proto-temporality too, once you're really clicking into the situation, you only have one choice. This is how you move forward. But here you have an absence of choice. There's no real freedom there. It's just a being. It's a fundamental state of immersion. Christians talk about it in terms of God or the Godhead. In the Greek philosophy, we're talking about forms, original forms that are unchanging. The understanding of proto-temporal of atemporality is that it is the ultimate goal of existence. It's a state of total perfection, a realm of complete fulfillment, of perfect peace. It's a state where there's no decay, illness, suffering, or any kind of bodily needs. There's only vibrant life as such. And it's also final and true justice and the realization of perfection and immersion in ultimate love. So it is a state that again underlies all the rest of the forms of temporality. It is a state that can be accessed. So in life, you can connect to atemporality in things like mystical experiences, Kensho experiences, enlightenment kind of experiences, peak experiences, the total immersion and flow. So there is moments where you're really just in this timeless flow. It's vividly present moment. You're immediately connection to the proto-temporal time space. It's a sense of emptiness, a sense of non-being. When they talk about sitting in oblivion, where you do away with all your consciousness and awareness and all distinctions, that's when you're connecting to atemporality. It's a break from regular kind of bio and other kinds of times. It's an absolute rest, pause for the soul. There's no strife, no self-definition, but you can access this. And it is, as we said earlier, very health supporting, because there is no decay, no decline, no illness in this atemporal state. So as you are connecting to this level of temporality, you can get a lot of a moment of perfect health, a moment of complete rest, a moment of just pausing. And that is very nurturing. And this concludes my presentation. So I'll go back here. And we're open to questions. I think we have a few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few minutes. Thank you, Livia. That's a lot to digest, but really packed with really cool information, really cool parallels to, obviously, you're noting all the parallels to Taoism. So usually the way we take questions during this conference is if we put them in the chat, and then I'll kind of relay them back to the speaker so that we keep organized. And if people are slow to ask a question, I'm going to jump in with a question. So you mentioned the kind of connection to the proto-temporal, right? That kind of divinatory state of time during meditation or during, obviously more formal means of divination. You mentioned that it kind of connects back to really only having one choice or one path. And do you have any examples or even just like ideas of what that looks like throughout one's life to have that kind of single pointed direction?
Yeah, it connects to this synchronicity idea. It's sort of like when you're in a situation where you need to make a major decision of some sort. You can put yourself in this very calm kind of state and then ask for a sign, essentially, or you could, divine with the I Ching. And then the I Ching will say, you need to do this. I can give you an example from a Chinese group that uses the I Ching. It's a offshoot of it's a new religion that is based on some Daoist principles, and they use the I Ching a lot. And so here's this lady who works in this company, and she feels that her job is fine, but she's like ready to become a supervisor. And so she goes and uses the I Ching, and the I Ching essentially says, the time is not right yet. You need more preparation. But then as the hexagrams go on, another 2 months down the road, an opening will appear. And so that's what she did. She's like, okay, yes, it's the right direction. I should move that way. But then she went out and did some more whatever training courses in the skills that were necessary for this supervisory job. And then 2 months later, she was ready and she got the job. So it's like, am I moving in the right direction? Is this the way to go? Is this the right time to do it? And so the I Ching helps with that, but synchronicity can help with it too. It's so like when I make decisions of, oh, should I attend this conference, or should I travel here, or should I do that, then I sort of look at all the different patterns and circumstances, and look at airlines, and look at flights, and look at different things, and there's situations where it just does not work, and it's like, this is not happening. You can tell. And then there's situations where it just comes together, and it's amazing when that happens. It's like all of a sudden, all these different, I'm sure you've experienced it, where things just like, you just pop together, and it's just right. So
Yeah, I think I'm experiencing something like that right now with the project that I'm working on. So, but that is one thing when you mentioned the relationship between meditation, that this stuff really started to happen when I started to engage in these forms of Taoist meditation and life practices, where you're able to access, or at least be aware of, the synchronicity that maybe
yes,
it existed before, but we're a little
yes,
bit the volume is too low, or the volume is too high on everything else
yes.
to notice. Yeah. Awesome. David, I'm going to ask you to formulate your statement in the form of a question so that I can ask it, because right now that's a very broad topic. I love the direction, but if you could be a little more specific, I'm just going to jump and I'll get back to you, please. Please, I would love to hear your question. Mary is asking, did you hear of any other unique and relatable practices outside of the meditation and mystical practices with folks who you met at the International Conference on Time that you mentioned going to in 2019?
Well, it depends on what you want. I mean, if you want timelessness, then you're looking at meditation practices. If you want, a better biotemporal adjustments, one of the things that I found very interesting that I learned is that the human body is not actually a 24-hour system. So it's like, here's the sun, and it's giving you, morning, day, and we divided this into 24 hours or 12 hours on the Chinese side. But the human body is not part of that. And they made these very interesting experiments where this person volunteered to go into this cave, and they're like really deep caves, and he had enough canned food and stuff, but he didn't have any sunlight whatsoever, and he stayed for several months. He did it several times, and he tried to sort of figure out he didn't have a clock, obviously, so he didn't try to figure out what day it was. And by the end of 3 months, he was like 10 days off, because his biological rhythm was 25 hours instead of 24. So there are things that you can do, matching the seasons, changing your rhythm. So it's like, I live in upstate New York, and we have seasonal change. And so when it's summer, like even a few months ago, 2 months ago, by 5 o'clock, I'm like up and running. And now it's like, okay, sun's getting up around 7. So, I'm sort of waking up at 6:30. So, and the Taoists also, like, in the traditional Baiyuan in Beijing, they didn't have electric lights. They would just match their rhythm to the seasons. So there's seasonal adjustments, then there's exercises that help with this. So there are many different practices. The Daoist conference in 2019, most of these people were not really interested in practice. Most of these people are interested in understanding and interpreting and sort of getting a grip on what's going on this time. So they haven't really mentioned too much of that.
Yeah, it's a cool anecdote. Maybe that's why we often feel like we should have an extra hour in the day.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, David has a question. He's asking, can you connect the concept of the Tao in more detail to these 6 levels of time?
the concept of the Tao. Well, the Tao before creation, like the Wuji, would be your atemporality, and then the Tao in the basic Taiji, the Yin Yang thing, would be the proto-temporality. And then you have the Tao as it manifests in the planets and in the stars is your eotemporality. And the Tao in the human body in day and night and summer and winter and the adjustments of living forms. And it's not just human, it's all life, plants and animals, and they all have temporality. That's your biotemporality. And then the Tao, as you flow with it in terms of past and future and of understanding, like the analytical seeing Tao as it flows and understanding it, that's your mental approach to it, which is no-temporal. And then anything to do with calendar structures and history and other organizational patterns that are described in time gets you to sociotemporality.
Awesome. Yeah, that's actually a very nice summary of, of the talk as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it says thank you. So I think if that's unless we have another question that rolls in very quickly, that's where we'll end it today. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Well,
Well,
thank you. It was my pleasure. And then I will stop sharing so we can have our screen back.
sweet. So we are